Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you for this distinguished faculty lecture. We're pleased to honor Dr. Robert Centore. This is an unusual year with COVID-19 and all that we've done to fight this from the very beginning. I want to thank all of our UAB community for serving everyone as well as possible. This award is now in its 57th year, and it's one of the highest honors in our academic medical center. And it's meant to honor someone for outstanding service in education, clinical care, and research. And this year's award, Dr. Robert Centore, really exemplifies all of those. He's known as a great clinician educator and has won every teaching award in the School of Medicine and in the university, including the President's Award for Excellence in Teaching. He has been a renowned clinician and an expert in sore throat, and Centore's criteria are what are still used around the world to diagnose pharyngitis. COVID-19 has been a devastating pandemic in the last year, but fortunately we're approaching the other side, and I want to thank all of the UAB community for your resilience and for your outstanding service to our community, our state, and indeed the world. We're joined by other distinguished faculty lecturers in this ceremony, and we're pleased to have them. We want to thank the Distinguished Faculty Lecture Award Committee for their service and their choice of Dr. Centore. And I also want to thank our events team for their outstanding work, as usual. We also are joined tonight by some of our Board of Trustee members, and we're so thankful for the University of Alabama System Board and their unwavering support of all of our efforts. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Selwyn Vickers, our Senior Vice President for Medicine and Dean of the School of Medicine, to introduce and say remarks about Dr. Centore.
I'm very excited to attend UAB's first ever virtual Distinguished Faculty Lecture, given by the 2020 Distinguished Faculty Awardee, Dr. Robert Centore. Bob's been at UAB for over 25 years. He was recruited by Dr. Hal Fallon, one of our prior deans, and has been a pillar of clinical leadership, education, and investigation for the UAB community. He's been a central academic leader, serving as the Dean of the Huntsville campus from 2004 to 2017. His efforts there and his tireless work really created a model regional campus that was attractive to all of our students as an option for their training. He's had seminal contributions to medical education that have been recognized repeatedly by his peers at UAB and beyond. He's received the President's Award for Excellence in Teaching in 2000. In 2017, he received the Ellen Greggs Engel UAB National Alumni Society Award for Lifetime Achievement in Teaching, becoming the first physician to win this award. He's also received the Robert Glaser Award from the Society of General Internal Medicine, which is the highest teaching award in academic internal medicine. These things alone document the excellence that Dr. Centore has been as an academic physician, leading educator and clinical investigator. Dr. Watts also mentioned that he was a leading sore throat expert and is a sought-after general internist. We're honored to have him to be a dynamic faculty member, a part of our campus. Many of our students and our colleagues have been blessed by his wisdom, his teaching skills, and his care for patients. Dr. Centore has a dynamic legacy at UAB built on his outstanding career of teaching, education, clinical service, and research. We're honored to have him as a faculty member, and I am honored to call him my colleague.
Hello, my name is Carlos Estrada. I'm an internal medicine physician and serve as the Chief of General Internal Medicine at UAB and at the Birmingham VA Medical Center. I have known Bob for over 25 years, and he was the one who recruited me to the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and Now he works in the division for me.
I'm Seth Landefeld. I'm a general internist and geriatrician here at UAB. I serve as chair of the Department of Medicine and a professor of medicine. I've worked closely with Bob Centore now for the last 8 years, and I've been his colleague over the full course of our academic careers. It's an incredible privilege to know Bob and to have worked with him in academic medicine. Well, Carlos, it's really thrilling to be here today to celebrate Bob Centore. I'm just so excited that Bob has been recognized with the highest award of our academic health center here at UAB, the Distinguished Faculty Lectureship. I have known Bob for probably 35 years. We grew up in the same discipline, academic general internal medicine, trained in clinical epidemiology, and the first thing I knew about Bob was when he was making really foundational discoveries about some of the presentations of disease. Everybody knows Centore's criteria for streptococcal pharyngitis. Bob developed those at a very early stage in career, and he's only built on that since then. How did you first come to know Bob?
So thank you for mentioning that. As you were talking about, you cannot believe how thrilled I was to meet him in person, because we learned about the Centore's criteria in med school. I could not contain myself. I was talking to my wife, and she was saying, "You look like a child." I am like a child now when you are in front of Bob Centore. And at the same time, he's humble, he's not unreachable, he's the most down-to-earth person. And along those lines, I want to mention 3 things, and I don't want to forget about those 3 things. The first one is he's a servant leader and a servant teacher. What do I mean? You will always find him talking to med students or others to say, "Did you get your money's worth?" referring to the medical school tuition, which is expensive. And by that, he lives by that principle. We're here to teach, we're here to serve others. When he talks about students, he gets so excited, his eyes shine, and it's very rewarding to see him.
He is an exceptional teacher. Bob and I was in Cleveland at the time. He was in Richmond at MCV, junior faculty, rising through the ranks. And the next thing I knew was when Bob came here to UAB as the founding director of our Division of General Internal Medicine. And having watched the development of that division now for over 25 years, I think one of the things that strikes me as most remarkable about it is how Bob has committed himself to serving others and to developing others as just exemplary teachers. I think this is really the finest division of medical educators, medical teachers in internal medicine in the country. And you got to grow up in that as well.
I was so privileged to be recruited by Bob, and he's just a force of medical education and being kindness and humble. Along those lines, part of the servant leader is, I will also remember, and others will remember, he said, "Carlos, what do you love to do?" I said, "What do you mean, Bob?" We all have to do things. We always have to do things we like. But most importantly, you have to do more of the things that you love. If you do more of the things you love, you're going to spend more time, you're going to focus more of your attention, and you're going to show your energy from that perspective. Bob has actually built the division for the last 20, 25 years, and he continues to contribute. We are lucky that he still teaches, primarily at the Birmingham VA Medical Center, but he teaches everyone who is willing to listen to him, which is quite a long list.
Well, we've spoken a lot about what an exemplary teacher Bob is, and it's easy to forget that he's also been a great leader in medicine, and I just wanted to say a couple words about that. Nationally and here at UAB, that over the course of his career, Bob has served in the council and as president of the Society of General Internal Medicine. He has served as the chair of the Board of Regents of the American College of Physicians, the largest organization of internists in the country, roughly 200,000 physicians, and has represented the interests of practicing physicians and their patients as well as of teachers and academic physicians. Here at UAB, Bob has not only served as the chief of the Division of General Internal Medicine, but as the dean of our regional campus in Huntsville, where he really led important strides in integrating medical students there, developing new curricula to really build out our Huntsville campus. His heart is clearly in teaching, and yet he's also been a really tremendous leader as well. We're incredibly grateful to Bob for all that he's done for the university and for all of us in the profession.
Thank you, Seth, for mentioning that. That's a small list of all of his accomplishments. And to honor Bob and his legacy and to ensure that his legacy continues, last year, the Division of General Internal Medicine launched a campaign to endow a full professorship in honor of Bob. Of course, we're going to name the professorship the Robert Centore, MD, MACP, Endowed Professorship in General Internal Medicine. We have raised a significant amount of money, and we want to increase the funds to the level of professorship and then a chair. So we just launched this campaign to support the leaders in general internal medicine to foster the next generation of clinician educators and leaders.
I wanted to conclude just with thanking Bob personally for everything that he's done for all of us on the faculty, as well as our students and our patients. Bob, your energy, your enthusiasm, your love for teaching, your love for caring for patients is truly infectious. You illustrate what Tinsley Harrison called the contagious fire that really sparks all of us in medicine and really draws great physicians together and creates the great physicians of the future. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Willett, and I'm a professor of medicine in the Division of General Internal Medicine in the Department of Medicine at UAB. I am the director of the Internal Medicine Residency Program and vice chair for education in the department.
My name is Tavo Huderbert. I'm a professor of medicine and medical education at the University of Alabama at Birmingham School of Medicine. I serve as the program director of the Internal Medicine Residency Training Program, as the designated institutional official of the University of Alabama Hospital, and my last administrative role was that of being the interim dean of the Montgomery Regional Medical Campus.
Well, I'm delighted to be here to talk about Bob Centore. And I guess I'll start with sharing that he was my very first boss when I joined the Division of General Internal Medicine. And it was so wonderful to learn from Dr. Centore's approach to medicine, approach to teaching, and how much he absolutely loved being a doctor. And I'll never forget how he would seek opportunities that he thought would make me successful. He would come to me and take me to lunch or meet with me, and so not only his mentorship of how to be a better clinician, how to be a better educator, but also his mentorship of how to be successful in academic medicine, and then his sponsorship to actually put me in the positions to have those roles and those leadership opportunities.
Bob was actually instrumental, as it was for Lisa, to develop my professional career. I met him first in 1990 at the Stanford Faculty Development Program to learn how to be better teachers. And we hit it off from day number one, and God knows why that was the reason we hit it off, but we became close friends since then. And after his arrival to UAB from VCU, he actually called me, and I was a mint new faculty member at UT Southwestern. It was impossible for me to move. But shortly after, 2 years later, he actually convinced me to come and interview at UAB and put together one of the best interviews I've had in my life, because he really took the time to identify those who knew me, who were already at UAB. I never stayed at a hotel, I stayed at friends' houses, and he said goodbye to me wearing shorts on a Friday afternoon to let me know that there was more to medicine than seeing patients and going to the hospital. So gave me very good vibe altogether. And unlike Lisa, I've known him so much longer, so I'm going to claim that over her, because it's been now 30 years since I know Bob. But more importantly, came here as a health services researcher, writing grants, writing publications, and having a lot of fun with him doing mathematical models. But clearly, at one point, he saw that my pathway was more into being a clinician educator, and was able to steer me in that direction, and that's how I became the program director because of his support. He had made an investment to bring me as a health services researcher, but he was a terrific mentor to put me on the pathway of being a clinician educator.
I want to say thank you to Bob Centore for everything you've done for me personally and professionally, and for everything you represent, and for making academic medicine just the best job ever. So thank you for being my best boss and for allowing me to be one of your learners so many years ago.
And I will echo that comment. As I said earlier, at a very young vulnerable part of my career, he steered me in the right direction. And his famous quote, "No, you have to do what you have a passion, what you love for, not what you are necessarily good at." And he told me, "You're going to be good at research, but you're going to love doing being a clinician educator." And he could have told me no, and he clearly decided that it was in my best interest to go in that pathway. So again, thank you, Bob, for all what you have done, not only for me or Lisa, but everybody in the Division of General Medicine who has had the privilege to work for you.
Well, thank you. I'm Robert Centore, and I'm an internist and clinician educator. I have great thanks to my colleagues who nominated me, and to the university who gave me a job back in 1993. The last 28 years here in Birmingham have been just tremendous, and getting this award from the university is the icing on the cake. What I'd like to do is tell you how I got to UAB, and I'm going to start with where I came from. My father was the first person in his family born in this country. His parents had immigrated from Poland. After World War II, he took the GI Bill to study at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. While he was there, he met my mother, who was born in what is now Israel, in Jerusalem, and grew up in a small town outside of Tel Aviv called Rishon LeZion. They got married, and several months later, I was conceived in Israel. My parents came back from Israel to New York on a boat, so my mother was pregnant with me on the boat, which explains a lot, I think. And I'm the fresh off the boat kind of person. When I was about 5, my father had gotten a master's in psychology and got a job in a small town in southwestern Virginia, Marion, Virginia, a town of about 8,000. And I spent the next 11 years there. This was a great experience growing up in a small town. It helped me understand the diversity of socioeconomic status and prejudice in this country in the 1950s. And I will be forever grateful for that experience. We moved to Richmond when I was in high school, subsequently went to the University of Virginia, where I got a BA in psychology in a cognitive psychology department. During my time in college, I worked at a hospital for emotionally disturbed children, and that spurred me into doing what my mother had always told me I was going to do from the age of 2, and that was be a physician. She told me this several hundred times. I did decide to go to medical school and went to the Medical College of Virginia in Richmond, which is now known as VCU. While there, I was a mediocre student for the first 2 years. I was used to thinking a lot during my undergraduate days, and it didn't seem like we thought as much in the first 2 years. But when I got to the third year, I totally fell in love with clinical medicine. In November of that year, I started my internal medicine rotation. It took me a week to realize that I was an internist. I had no idea before then. And that's a love affair that has existed ever since. A month later, I got married to my wonderful wife, who I've been in love with more than medicine by about 2 years, and we're about to celebrate our 48th anniversary. We have 2 kids, two grandchildren, and I'm very thankful to them for supporting me throughout my career. I want to go back to one thing that my father told me over and over again, which I think really has influenced where I've gone. We were in a family that we'd argue at the dinner table, and we'd discuss things at the dinner table, and my father told me several hundred times, if you can't explain something, then you don't really know it. So that was a thought that has always been in my mind, and that has a lot to do with teaching medicine. I stayed on at MCV as a resident, became a chief resident, did a year of basic research and realized I like taking care of patients better than taking care of rats. It just didn't work for me. Joined the faculty after my residency and chief residency. Eventually became the program director and eventually became the division chief of general internal medicine. My chairman of medicine for all of those years, from the time I was a 4th-year student, which was 1974, until 1993 was Harold Fallon. And in 1993, I was looking at jobs elsewhere. It was the time in my career that I thought that a move would be useful for me. And I was getting ready to do a 2nd or 3rd interview at another institution, and he said, please don't make a decision until February. And then he announced that he was going to become the dean at UAB in February, and he made it clear that he would not talk to me about a job until February 1st. On February 1st, 1993, he gave me a call. And he and Claude Bennett recruited me to UAB at that time. Claude was still the chairman of medicine for 18 days after I got here July 1st, and he wanted to start a new division of general internal medicine and asked me to do that. Hal Fallon recruited me to be the associate dean for primary care, which was a new position at UAB. And to both Claude and Hal, I'll be forever grateful for this great opportunity to come to an institution that allowed me to dream and to create, and that really has been extraordinarily special. In 1993, general internal medicine divisions were really blossoming around the country, and we had had one at MCV for 15 years previously, so I was involved nationally in general internal medicine through the Society of General Internal Medicine and had some vision of what we could do. But I inherited a new division. We had a few people from an old combined division, but we had a very sparse faculty, none of whom were really involved nationally. And so it took quite a while to try to build something. We built some research parts, but we quickly became very important in clinical education. The most important thing in the creation of that division was something that happened in 1990. In 1990, I went to Stanford and spent a month with a legendary teacher of teaching, Dr. Kelly Skeff at Stanford University. And I met this brash young fellow from Medical College of Wisconsin, Gustavo Hudebert. We became good friends, and as soon as I accepted the job at UAB, I called him up to see if he would be willing to move to Birmingham. He had just accepted a job in Dallas, and so I was distraught, but That's how things go. I was having trouble recruiting people who had some national experience and had been at other institutions to give us a little thought diversity. And I put an ad in the New England Journal of Medicine. And usually when you put these ads in the New England Journal of Medicine, it's so that human relations will be happy with you, human resources will be happy that you included that. Come back from seeing patients one afternoon, and this is back when telephones had lights blinking. When the lights were blinking, it means there was a message. I got a message from Gustavo Hudebert. Gustavo said, "Is this an ad to satisfy because you're going to hire somebody else, or is it a real job?" I called him up immediately, and within 3 months, I'd recruited him to Birmingham. And so I had my key person to bounce ideas off of. And Gustavo and I have had this wonderful relationship where we could argue constantly, never ever personal. We could tell each other's strengths and faults, and having someone that you can do that with just makes it so much easier to succeed in your career. So I have just incredible thanks for his friendship and collegiality over the years. How did I get here? Well, on the research side, when I was back in Richmond in 1980, I did a little research study on sore throats and collected a bunch of data, went to a statistician to figure out what to do with the data. By the way, don't ever do that. Figure out what the statistics are before you do the study, but I was a rookie. And he left the room for about 10 minutes, came back and said, well, you ought to try logistic regression. I had no idea what logistic regression was. I had no idea how to program a computer, and spent the next 3 months learning the program, understanding what it did, produced a prediction rule that has been validated many times and got me better known on a national basis. When I got here, I thought I was going to not do any more research in that field, but later on in my career, a different bacteria, because originally we were just worried about group A strep, and in the early part of this century, more and more data were coming out that Fusobacterium necrophorum was important. And thanks to collaboration with Ken Waits from pathology and Prescott Atkinson from pediatrics, we developed a PCR for Fusobacterium, and then worked with the wonderful group in student health to collect data and publish what is considered a very important paper on Fusobacterium as a cause of young adult pharyngitis, and found out that the prediction rule that was meant for strep also worked for Fusobacterium. That's given me an opportunity to continue to write about that and be known well enough that when I write letters for students and interns, people actually read my letters. The other big project that we did for about 10 years was on ward attending rounds. During all this time, I was on the wards 3 or 4 months a year, continued from when I was Richmond, loving teaching students, interns, and residents. And I'd learned a lot about the theory and about how to think about this from Kelly Skeff, but I still had a lot of questions about what the learners really wanted. So along with Analia Castigliani, who is now at the University of Central Florida in an administrative position, a number of people from the division, including Gustavo Hudebert, Lisa Willett, Ryan Kramer, and one of our chief residents, Rita Roy, who ends up being the first author of the paper, we published a series of papers on what learners want out of ward attending rounds. This paper has been cited many, many times, and will inform much of what I say in several minutes. I think it's time to talk about philosophy. What's my philosophy of being a clinician educator. Because while I've written a lot and I had a lot of administrative positions, my great love has always been teaching at the bedside, teaching students, interns, and residents. I mentioned earlier that I went to the University of Virginia, and like most people who went there, I'm a huge basketball fan. Our basketball program has an incredible coach, Tony Bennett, not the singer, but the basketball coach. And he has 5 pillars for his program. And I think that these 5 pillars really say a lot about how we should think of ourselves when we're teaching. The first is humility. Now, what does humility mean? Well, he describes it as knowing what you're not good at and not being embarrassed by that and not getting upset about that, and knowing what you're good at but not getting too big a head over what you're good at. Use what you're good at, try to strengthen that, and seek help when you're not very good at something. The second is passion. And I think that that's one of the most important characteristics that I've had for internal medicine my entire career. I love internal medicine. I love the patients. I love the thought process. It's sort of a trope to say right brain and left brain. It's not really true, but most people understand that the left brain thoughts are the way we deduce, the way we think and use information, and the right brain is how we interact with patients. Internal medicine is that beautiful, beautiful combination of the two. I really like patients. I really want to help them. But I also love the thought process and trying to figure out what's wrong. And when we can figure out what's wrong with the patient, often we can help the patient get better, and that's just a beautiful thing. I try to inject that passion into what I do all the time and infect the learners with that passion. The third pillar is unity, and most clinical teaching occurs with students, interns, residents, an attending physician getting together and working as a team. It's often working with a team of consultants. It's often working with the nurses, the people who clean, the dietitians, the physical therapists, everybody. And preserving that unity is very important for the success of our patients. I wrote a piece a number of years ago about servanthood, about being a servant leader. And as I think about being a servant leader, it's that when you're in the leadership position, when you're running the team, it's your responsibility to help everybody on the team grow. And that's a concept that I think needs to be made explicit, that our job in medical schools is to help our medical students grow into being good residents and our residents grow into being good practicing physicians. And that servanthood concept is that it's not about us who are teaching, it's about how we serve the people the students who are paying money to go to school and the residents who are working really hard to get to that stage. And the final is thankfulness. So that's the fifth pillar. And as you can tell, I'm very, very thankful for this reward. But if I had never gotten an award, the thankfulness I get from the students, interns, and residents every time I go to the wards is such huge payment. The thankfulness that you get from patients when you figure out what's wrong with them and help them. We're very fortunate to be internists and to be able to fulfill that part of the pillars on a very regular basis. In our ward attending round studies, we found that there were 5 domains of successful ward attending rounds. The first is learning atmosphere. It has to be a pleasant atmosphere. You can't have people who are scared of you, scared to talk, scared to participate. There's clinical teaching, and that clinical teaching is making sure that people understand how to take a history, how to do a physical exam, those types of things. Then there's teaching style, and the most important thing in teaching style is sharing one's thought processes. And I'll mention this again here in just a minute, but that was almost an epiphany for me. I was doing it, but I didn't realize that that was the single thing that our learners most wanted from us, is they wanted to know how we thought. Because they can look up facts, you can pull out your cell phone and look up facts, but if you don't know how to use the facts, then you can't become the clinician that you want to be or that we want you to be. There's communicating expectations. We do have expectations of our learners. We want to do things in a certain way and make sure they understand what those are. And then there's team management. And team management is showing respect for the learners, giving them enough time to do the things that they have to do that we don't have to do because we're the attending physicians. And that was a nice analysis. This analysis was greatly enhanced by Rick Shuchuk from the School of Health Professions. The highest values that learners want from their medical education, their clinical medical education, are the sharing of the thought process, bedside teaching. They want to go to the bedside with an experienced clinician, learn how to do an exam, learn how to talk to patients, how to deliver bad news, how to teach patients what's going on, try to motivate them to be able to take better care of themselves. So role modeling is really good. How do you treat people? We can ruin medical students, interns, and residents if we treat people badly. It doesn't matter how we talk the talk, it's how we walk the walk that matters to them, because they're going to mimic what we do, not what we say. And the final one is respect for everyone. And I mentioned that before when I was talking about unity. It's respect for the medical students, knowing their names, knowing who they are, knowing what their goals are. Because of the thought process, my latest, greatest medical hobby is clinical reasoning. About 25 years ago, we started doing many clinical reasoning conferences here at UAB. I'm a member of a wonderful division where we have a lot of people who are interested in this and in trying to teach all of our learners how to think. There's a society devoted to this now that I'm a member of, the Society to Improve Diagnosis in Medicine. And in my career, we have published a number of clinical problem-solving exercises that show the thought process as a way to teach our learners. I'd like to finish by talking about how important I think clinician educators are and why it's so important that all medical schools value those clinician educators. As I think back to my time in medical school, I think of several people who taught me clinical medicine. These names won't mean much to the people watching this, but they mean a lot to me. Orrin Murin is a pulmonologist who infected me with a love of acid base, taught me how to examine patients in the ICU, and just made me love medicine. Alvin Svass is a gastroenterologist who I remember on rounds as an intern once sat down and taught us by going through the physiology of bilirubin. I don't remember a thing he said, but I remember that he taught the physiology, and the physiology has really been a way that I've used my teaching over the years. And then Reno Vlašević. Reno Vlašević was Yugoslavian. He had a heavy accent, and he ran the GI ward at the VA like a drill sergeant. You better know your stuff when you present it to Reno Vlašević, because he knew it, and if you tried to tell him the wrong thing, it would get you right. And the discipline to pay attention to the details. I learned from Reno Vlahovic. I had him as a student, as an intern, and as a resident, and enjoyed it every day, although I was a little terrified at times. Because we remember these role models, you ask almost any physician who influenced them the most in medical school, and it's going to be some clinician educators, maybe some residents. But that's going to be who they remember. And so therefore, clinician educators are very important for the nation if we're going to develop the types of physicians that everybody needs. I'm really thankful that we have large numbers of great clinician educators at UAB. We've done a lot to try to teach people how to be educators and to try to be even better educators. But I will challenge all medical schools to try to figure out how to make clinician educators know that that role is greatly appreciated. We have a three-legged stool in academic medicine. We have research, clinical care, and education. And sometimes in some institutions, the people who are devoted to education feel like they're a second thought. It's not easy to be a clinician educator. Just because you're a good clinician doesn't mean you're going to be a good clinician educator, because education requires a set of skills that we don't do a good job teaching. So I hope that all medical schools will invest in trying to educate the educators to be the best they can, and pick the people who are enthusiastic about this and allow them to be that. It's impossible to put into words how grateful I am for receiving this Distinguished Faculty Lecture Award. It's not something that I expected, but it's absolutely wonderful having the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. I thank the university and once again the colleagues who nominated me. Thank you for listening.
Bob, what an amazing lecture. Thank you so much. It is my distinct honor on behalf of the University of Alabama at Birmingham of giving you this plaque as the Distinguished Faculty Lecturer 2020 and this portrait by a local artist. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Carlos.
Thank you, Dr. Centore, for the wonderful lecture. It's now my pleasure to introduce you into the esteemed company of our previous distinguished faculty lecturers. I want to thank Dr. Estrada for his nomination of Dr. Centore, and again, congratulations and welcome into distinguished company.